Hi, this is Stephen Wilson and you're watching Chaos TV. Enjoy.
Hello Stephen and welcome to Chaos TV. So how has the time in Finland been so far?
The time in Finland has been spent mostly sleeping so far, I'm afraid to say. But I always enjoy coming to Helsinki, so I'll get out and about later.
Yeah. This year has had quite a huge start for you. So you just released your fourth solo album, Cant Erase, in February, and you started your new tour recently in Europe. So how has the response for the new material been so far?
It's been amazing. You know, I think there's always that sense that you record something and you make this very exquisite, like perfect studio version, but then when you start to play it live, something else happens and you get more electricity, if you like, more interaction with the audience, more interaction with the band, and that's definitely been happening with this material. It feels like it's still growing and still evolving, and it's been really exciting to play it live.
Awesome. So from what I've read, the reviews have been just great. And do you usually pay attention what media writes about you?
You know what, I really don't. I know some people actually don't believe me. They say, no, it can't be true that he doesn't read. I really don't read reviews, and particularly I don't read online. The thing is, these days, you know, we live in a world where you have potentially hundreds and thousands of critics, because the internet provides a forum for anyone that hears your record to write a review, you know, whether it's just on Amazon, whether it's on some forum. And it's very easy, I think, as a musician or as an artist, to get really sort of hung up on what everyone says. And the problem is you can read 99 reviews that will be very positive, and then the 100th review will be the negative one. That's the one that you carry around with you, yeah. So I learned a long time ago, don't read anything. Don't read the good stuff, don't read the bad stuff, don't read the stuff in print, don't read the stuff online, because at the end of the day it's all noise to an extent, and it's all a distraction. And I'm a great believer that the real artist, if I can be pretentious and call myself that for a moment, the real artist only makes art for themselves. In a way, that is the definition of an artist. You know, if you want to be an entertainer, that's different. An entertainer is someone who looks at their audience, says, what do my audience want? I will give it to them. But an artist, quote unquote, is someone, I think, who does it for themselves. And that is the only way I can really make music, is in a very selfish way.
Well, that's true. Too many artists make art for just like for money. I think that's the thing nowadays.
See, I would say if you make art for money or for a market, then you have ceased to be an artist. You've become an entertainer, or you've become a product, even worse. I don't believe Picasso painted pictures to please other people, you know. And that, not that I'm comparing myself to a great artist like Picasso, but that for me is a kind of, you know, a reference point. These are the guys I admire. These are the guys that seem to do it because they had some kind of vocation to do it. There was something that came from within them. I have to do this, and if other people like it, that's great. But that's not why I do it, and I'm not going to let them tell me how I should do it.
That's great. How do you feel about your new record now after the release?
I think when I finish a record, I always have a slightly ambivalent kind of connection with it, because I don't want to hear it ever again. You know, I mean, I spent 18 months of my life writing, arranging it, demoing it, recording it, mixing it, mastering it, promoting it. I've got to the point where my personal relationship with the record is one like where I'm proud of it. Like if you ask me, am I proud of it? Yeah, of course I am. Do I believe in it? Yes. Do I think it's a good record? I hope so. Do I ever want to hear it again? No. You know, I am proud of it. I do think it's one of the best things I've ever done, if not the best thing I've ever done. But for me, it's already like something now set in stone, and it's in the past. So it's like, okay, what's the next thing?
How do you usually come up with the ideas for the new songs, and how does your songwriting process work?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. But one thing I do know is that I'm a very curious person, so I'm always absorbing movies, books, other music, news stories, things that my friends tell me, things that are happening in my own life, and all of those things become your input, and they all kind of go inside you and become part of your experience, part of your knowledge. And then when you come to write a piece of music, something usually kind of jumps up and says, hey, write about me today. And in this case, with Hand Cannot Erase, it was this story of this woman called Joyce Carol Vincent, who was a young woman who was found dead in her flat in London about 10 years ago in North London, and she'd been there for 2 years and her body had not been discovered, which for me was an incredibly shocking, haunting, but also very significant story. For me, it said a lot about what it means to be living in the 21st century, living in the city in the 21st century. Now, I didn't, when I heard that story, and in fact I saw a documentary about her, I didn't suddenly say to myself, this is going to be the concept of my next record. But I carried it around with me for months and months afterwards because it was such a powerful thing. So that when I came to start writing music, I found that I was almost channeling this kind of character that was inspired by Joyce Carol Vincent. How could a young woman have arrived at this point in her life? So that became, I wouldn't be pretentious enough to say that the subject chose me, but it was almost like that, where I wasn't necessarily consciously deciding to write about this. It was just what my kind of consciousness sort of put forward at that point. And so the answer to your question is I don't know. I don't know what my next song will be about until I sit down to write it.
Awesome.
It's kind of a nice surprise for me too, you know?
This album has been said to be a summary of everything that you've created on your career, but then again it's been said to be like nothing that you've created.
Right.
So what did you do differently this time, and how has the sound evolved?
That has been, I think I was the first person to say, actually. I said it in a documentary interview when we were making the record. I said, in a way, this feels like an album where I've drawn together all of the different strands of my career, you know, whether it's, you know, long, complex pieces, metal riffs, electronic stuff, pop stuff. Why is it like that? I think, this is my theory, I think the reason the album is like that is because the story suggested a very diverse musical palette. When you're writing about someone's whole life, and I am here from writing about a young woman from like being born to basically the point at which she disappears, there's a lot to cover. You've got to cover joy, you know, anger, fear, nostalgia, loss, regret, sadness, depression. All of these things have got to be covered within the sphere of this life. And I think that naturally led me to a much more varied musical style, which drew on a lot of the different things I'd done in the past. And it also led me to a more modern sound, because this is a story set now. Like my previous solo record was more like a bunch of old-fashioned ghost stories, almost like gothic, you know, and it had a more kind of vintage sound. But this record had to sound modern, to reflect, you know, the modern world we live in. So that, I think that answers the first part of your question. Why is it so diverse? The other part of your question, yeah, I mean, it feels like it's like nothing else I've done. I mean, I like to think that everything I do is distinctly different to everything else I do. I don't like this idea of repeating myself, which is why in a way sometimes the fans find me incredibly frustrating, you know, because they think they've got used to a new direction, and then I do something completely different for my next record. But this comes back to what we were saying earlier about how I have to be, in a way, kind of selfish about the way I make my music. And one thing I have to feel like is that there's always a sense of evolution from one record to the next, and I hope that's true of this one too.
Yes. What is the significance of the album title, and at what point did you decide on the title?
There is a reason why the album is called Hand Cannot Erase. I'm not going to tell you the meaning, but I'll answer your question by explaining to you why I'm not going to answer your question, if that doesn't sound too confusing. I think one of the less fortunate things about making a record is that you have to give it a title. Let me explain what I mean by that. This is a record that is about lots of different things. All those things I mentioned, it's about this whole woman's life. So there's all these things going on. How can you give a record like that a title? Well, how can you encapsulate this whole life and this whole story in one convenient little soundbite. You can't. I mean, for me, I could have called the album The Loneliness of Living in the City, because it's kind of about that, but it's about everything else too. So what I've done is I've compromised by picking a title which actually is kind of ambiguous, and it's not clear what you're supposed to understand from it. I like that. I like the fact that it is enigmatic, and I like the fact that everyone that comes to me has a different interpretation of what this title means. Obviously, the key word in that title is the word erase, because this is a woman this is a young woman who effectively erases herself from the world and from the consciousness of other people. So you can kind of begin to understand there's a little link into the story there. But as to what the specific title means, it does have a meaning to me. People ask me why the punctuation, why the full stop after each word. I don't want to explain. I don't want to explain because I like the fact that people are going to think about that now, and they're going to, you know, puzzle over it themselves, and everyone will come to me with their own interpretation of it, and I love that.
I think that's what makes people interested in it.
I think that's what makes people interested in a lot of great art, that there is always a kind of blank space for the person that experiences the art to kind of put themselves in, to be a part of it, and to filter it through their own life and their own interpretation. I think that's the beauty of music, particularly. In some ways, I think music has that over cinema and literature, because cinema and literature is more kind of, it's more explicit what they're telling you. You know, you see the characters, you hear what they're saying, you know exactly what's happening. With music, it's always a little bit more ambiguous, and I think the fan or the listener can always make more of the music filtered through their own life and their own experience. And I think that's a fascinating thing about music, or good music.
Yes. So what makes you interesting during your career? You won and been nominated for numerous well-recognized awards. So has some award anywhere been more meaningful for you than the rest, and why?
Do you know what? I think the best thing of all is when someone you are a fan of, you find out that they're also a fan of yours. And although that's not specifically, in the literal sense, an award, it's a reward. For example, in London last month, David Gilmour came to my show. David Gilmour is like, and he came to my show because he likes the album. That for me is the best award of all, because this is a guy that, well, not only is he kind of rock royalty, this is a guy I grew up listening to his music, so his whole musical sort of vision is in my DNA. So to find out that someone you grew up listening to is now listening to your music, there's no award that could match that. So that was the biggest thrill for me. Not just him, but some of the people I've worked with over the last few years, that people I actually grew up listening to. You know, that's been, I think, so that kind of recognition by the people that influenced and inspired me to be an artist in the first place, that's the best thing of all.
I can imagine. How do you feel about the awards in general?
I'd be lying if I said, you know, that it was not fun to receive an award. Of course, it's very flattering. The whole notion of music being some kind of sport or competition, you know, like, is this band better than that band? Is this album better than that album? It's absurd. Of course, it's absurd, you know, but it's fun, and actually, it is a kind of sign, I suppose, that you have some respect from the industry and from you know, from your peers. So I'd be lying if I said it wasn't, you know, kind of a thrill. But I also understand that it's, as I'm sure the people that give the awards do, that it's also kind of absurd to think of music like an Olympic sport where there's a winner and there's a loser, because of course that's not the case.
You're a true multi-talent when it comes to instruments. So is there a certain favorite instrument that you like more than the most common ones?
I like the studio, and I know some people wouldn't consider the studio to be an instrument, but for me it is, because the studio these days is, I mean, listen, I don't really consider myself to be a musician in the traditional sense. I don't have a great passion for a particular instrument, which I guess is the answer to your question. The answer is no, but what I do have a passion for is making records, being a producer, being an auteur, being kind of like, you know, someone who's got this kind of vision in their head and whatever it takes to make that vision real, I will find a way to do it, you know. And if that means learning a little bit of piano, a little bit of guitar, a little bit of banjo, a little bit of dulcimer, a little bit of violin, whatever it is, I like to think I can pick up any instrument and make it sound okay, you know. I'm never going to be great at any of them, but it all comes back to this idea that what I love to do is make records, and I love to be in the studio processing sounds, manipulating sounds, creating textures, creating these kind of musical journeys. So I don't really consider myself to be a musician. I mean, I can start a song on any instrument. If you give me a guitar, a piano, a drum machine, a bass guitar, I like to think I'll get something out of it. So the studio is my favourite environment, or my favourite instrument.
That's a good answer. So what do you think are your weaknesses as a musician?
Too many to mention. I mean, I think, is this a weakness? One of the biggest problems I think any musician has is that you can't, at the end of the day, disguise your own personality. And actually, sometimes you want to. I mean, I don't think my voice is the strongest thing. I don't have a strong voice, but I found a way to use my voice that works in the context of my music. So no matter how much I would love to be able to sing like Jeff Buckley, or some of the great singers, I know I'm never going to be able to do that. So I found a way that I can make my voice work in my music, and I can't ever change that. I can go and listen to a great, Marvin Gaye record, but I'm never going to sound like Marvin Gaye. And in a way, there's always a frustration that you can't. But it's a good thing, because it means that whatever you do will always ultimately sound like you.
Yeah, you should never try to be anything else than you.
Exactly. So actually, it's a good thing at the end of the day. I think the answer to your question is, I think I feel my vocals are very limited. I've found a way to use my voice that is satisfactory to me, but I'm still incredibly frustrated by the limitations I have as a singer.
As you mentioned, David Gilmour, Pink Floyd was one of the first bands that got you into music. So since then you've been highly compared to them, and you even said to be the Pink Floyd of the 90s. So how do you feel about the comparison, and where do you draw your inspiration from nowadays?
It's a very difficult thing to answer that question, because I think any artist, certainly one that's been making records as long as me, more than 20 years now, would like to think that they have a unique musical personality of their own, and I think I do. So any comparison, no matter how flattering it might seem on the surface, it's kind of annoying to me. Even one as wonderful as Pink Floyd, I'm not trying to be anyone. I'm trying to make records that are distinctly unique to me. I'm trying to make Steven Wilson records. So some people will sort of say, you're like the modern Pink Floyd, and they mean it as a compliment, but actually to me it's kind of irritating, because I'd rather be the modern Steven Wilson, or the contemporary Steven Wilson, rather than the modern Pink Floyd or the modern whatever, But at the same time, of course, I have to acknowledge that listening to Pink Floyd records when I was very young, particularly through my father, who introduced me to Pink Floyd, was a strong part of my musical DNA, and gave me, in a way, this love of the idea of telling stories across an album, and being more conceptual about the way I made records, not just writing 10 pop songs, but actually trying to have this narrative go through the record, which is kind of something that Pink Floyd, if not invented, they certainly became the blueprint for that. So I have to acknowledge that I'm in that tradition, and that there are certain textural elements that remind people of Pink Floyd, but at the same time I'm not consciously aware of being influenced by them anymore. And in fact, I haven't really listened to that. I mean, I listen to a lot of other music now. I listen to electronic music, jazz music, metal music, whatever it is. It's been a while since I listened to Pink Floyd, but I suppose they're so in my DNA that they will always... It's like when you're a kid. The things that happen to you when you're a kid, in a way, are the things that will form you as an adult. If you become like shy as a child, as I was, you'll always be shy. You can never get out. You can never get that out of you. You can have therapy. You can do whatever. If you're angry as a kid, then you'll always be angry. There's something about what you have as a kid and what you kind of absorb as a child that will always be in your DNA. And Pink Floyd will always be in my musical DNA. So yes, it's very flattering, but slightly irritating, if that makes sense. Yeah.
It does. So as the last thing, I would like you to tell us about the music industry and its future. So as everyone knows, the music industry has been changing a lot during the last decade. So how do you see the next decades of the music industry? Like, are there going to be some major changes that will affect on the future of music somehow?
It's an interesting time right now. The music industry has changed. I mean, the 20 years I've been doing it, the music industry has changed beyond recognition. Some people would say that there barely is a music industry anymore, and I could understand why somebody would say that. I think there is, but it's certainly changed. In some respects, things are improving now because I see a return to the interest in the physical piece, the art, the vinyl, the special edition. And there was a time, about even as recently as 5 or 6 years ago, when people were worried that no one was going to ever buy a physical musical product ever again. Why would you need to? You can download MP3s, you can get it for free, you can stream it, whatever. And it's been interesting in the last few years how the pendulum has swung back in the other direction a bit. And the reason it's swung back in the other direction is because kids are buying vinyl. Not old guys like me, but people like your age, like, you know, the kind of 17 to 25 year age group, are now going out and buying vinyl records. Why? They don't have any nostalgic attachment to records, but I think it's that kind of acknowledgement that if you are a fan of music, you want to somehow own it and treasure it and have some physical manifestation of this thing that you love. It's a piece of art. It's a piece of art. If you loved a painting, you'd want to hang it on your wall. You wouldn't just want a JPEG on your phone. And I think it's the same with music, and it's definitely going in the right direction again. I don't think it's ever going to be a massive thing again, you know, vinyl or you know, physical products. But at least to me, it tells me that there will always be a place. And it's not just going to all become about Spotify and streaming, which is a very ugly world to me. To me, partly because I'm old, it doesn't compute with me at all. The idea of music somehow divorced from the physical presence of it, being able to hold it in your hand, the lyrics and the artwork. To me, that's almost sacred, you know. So I've been encouraged by that, and I think that's what's going to happen with the music industry. It's going to become more and more polarized. On one hand, you will have people who are very happy just to stream music as ones and zeros, and on the other hand, you will have the real music lovers who will want the vinyl, the special edition with the booklet and the bonus disc and whatever it is, you know. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad result for the music industry.
Yeah, as long as they are buying it and not just streaming it from the internet.
Right.
Yesterday, but there was a record store day, and that's a great thing for me, I think.
And that's been very successful, you know. And I think as long as there are still people out there that want to feel like they should pay for, you know what, it comes down to one thing: do you consider music to be art, or do you consider music to be content? That is the difference. Some people think music now is just content. They shouldn't have to pay for it. They'll pay for the device, but then they shouldn't have to pay for the content that streams to that device. Or do you consider the other point of view, that you consider music to be the driving force, and that the way you listen to music is not relevant? It's all about the art, the piece of art. And I think that kind of appreciation is on the rise again. And actually, 5 years ago, if you'd asked me, I'd have been a lot more pessimistic. So things are definitely going in the right direction, I think.
That's true. All right, so that was all about it. Now you can hold the mic and say your greetings to your Finnish fans and for the world.
Okay. Hi, this is Stephen Wilson, and I'm sending out a big greeting to all my Finnish fans. Keep listening to the music, and I'll see you on tour somewhere. Okay? That was